What is going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round one prize picks preview for this week's Farmers Insurance Open. Going to go through the venue for this week. It'll be Torrey Pines, the South Course, for all of the main props on the board. But go through some of the stats, the average green rate, fairway percentage, all that sort of fun stuff. Go through a weather report for tomorrow because if you're new to golf analysis, new to golf betting, when it comes to the prop side, weather is one of the bigger things to consider for every single slate. And then at the end, what all of you came here for, a look at three of the props that I'll be playing here for the first round of action and using in my slips. So like I mentioned, let's start with a look at the golf course. So we've got the South Course, the harder of the two venues that you're going to see here year in and year out at Torrey Pines. In a long course, they have it listed at just over 7,600 yards. The actual scorecard yardage is actually a little bit closer to 7,800. So one of the longer courses on tour actually plays over par. So if you've been only playing golf for the last few weeks, you've seen scoring averages of like 2.5 under par, 3.5, even 4 under par the last round there at the Amex. It's going to be the complete opposite here. The South Course is extremely difficult. It plays long. The driving accuracy is also hard to come by. It actually was a lot higher last year than you're used to seeing at almost 59%. There are years where it's below 50%, where it's closer to 47, 48% fairway percentage among the hardest to hit on all of the tour. In terms of your green regulation percentage, anytime you have a relatively long course, it's going to be really difficult to hit the greens, especially when they're only 5,000 square foot. So once again, they were hit at a 65% clip last year, but that was healthily above the average you've seen over the years. There's been years where it's been less than a 57% green and regulation percentage, which is some of the hardest to hit greens on all of the PGA Tour. So as of last year, the average was 11.7 greens. They're at 65%. In terms of your driving accuracy, it was close to 8.2 fairways. So not all that bad, but just keep in mind that in a few of the years in the past, it's been a little bit more difficult than that. So don't be surprised to see those same sort of metrics. Going over to the weather for Wednesday, it looks pretty beautiful. The one thing I will say is that it's going to be cool out. The temperature only between right around 46 and 54 degrees. So that's only going to add to some of the distance there. When it's a little bit cooler out, the ball doesn't travel nearly as far. So it does actually make a pretty big impact on play. There could be a little bit of rain in the afternoon. And in San Diego, the area this course is in, La Jolla, California, has gotten a lot of rain over the last few weeks. So the course should play even softer than usual, even longer than usual, which should add a little bit of difficulty. The rough is a lot more lush than you're used to seeing because of some of that moisture. They haven't been able to cut it as much. It's also a lot more dense than you're used to seeing. So the missed fairway penalty should be even higher than what you saw here last year. Just overall, it's shaping to really be a long hitters week where you've got to be somebody with that distance, the power to hit out of that really lush rough. And then I think it's going to be a little bit of carnage there on Thursday because I know we're focusing on round one here, but when we get to Friday, it's going to be absolute madness. They're calling for nearly 40-mile-an-hour winds there early on Thursday morning. So, you're going to be looking at a much different event than what you've seen over the first few weeks here in 2023. For the prize picks board, three props that I really want to focus on here and on three different categories. The three main categories I'm targeting. I was on greens regulation. I guess we'll start there with the props that I had before that ended up getting bumped. I had the under on Montgomery at 12.5 greens and then the under down here on Hostler at 12 greens of regulation. And while I still don't hate the plays, you could take them after the bumps. I still think that they're, some of the best props on the board. But the reasoning wasn't that the average last year was 11.7 greens of regulation. If we're expecting it to play even longer, that actually, even though it's going to play softer, you'll have more receptive greens. It's going to make those shots out of the rough even more difficult. You're going to have just a harder time actually advancing the ball out of that really lush rough this time around. So for an inaccurate player like a Montgomery, also for an inaccurate player like a Hostler, who's going to be in the rough a lot more often than most players and isn't really the best iron player to begin with, I expected those sort of players to struggle even more so. So those were a couple of fades I took. They already ended up getting bumped down. But let's talk about the props that we can take at this point, right? They haven't been touched. So we've got Cam Davis to start, 3.5 birdies or better. The average last year for birdies at the South Course was just 3.05. So there's not a huge margin there, but Cam Davis is among the elite birdie makers on the PGA Tour. So just to give you an idea over here, Cam Davis was number 27 in 2022 on tour when it came to birdie or better percentage, making them on 23% of holes. So, well above the projection here. I know it's a much more difficult course, so, it's not apples to apples here when trying to make those sort of judgments. But when the average is 3, we can project him well above that mark. I have him closer to 3.9 birdies on this slate, so not a shoo-in to get to 4, right? We'd hope that he'd be closer to like 4.2, 4.3 birdies. Just, you're not going to get that on this course. It's difficult. Even the best rounds are usually guys getting to right around 4 birdies. You'll see a 5, 6 birdie round from time to time out there. But Jon Rahm's 66 in round 1 last year was the outlier. You don't see that very often. That's going to open a lot of eyes around Torrey Pines if he goes out there and does that again. But if anybody's going to get to 4, it's going to be those elite, aggressive, long players like a Cameron Davis. So that's why he checks that box for me. Again, aggressive, and the huge factor I'm looking at here to kind of like break ties is the length off the tee, which Cam Davis has in bunches. Next up, we've got Kurt Kitayama under strokes. I have him at 72.5 under, and he's another elite distance guy. He hits the ball an absolute mile. One of the better iron players on tour, and the reason why I love him for strokes is his around the green play is completely underrated. He's actually top 5 in the field right now in terms of his shots gained around the green, I believe over the last 9 measured events. And on top of that, he's not the best putter, but when it comes to strokes, if you have that strong, tee to green game, you're going to be consistent. You're going to make a bunch of pars out there. And if he were to make par on all 18 holes, right, that's a 72, right? Let alone, we know he's going to make some birdies on some of those par 5s. He's got the elite distance to actually get there in 2. Really like his chances to not only play well this week, but to at the very least shoot even par or better. So the scoring average was slightly over par last year. I think that Kurt Kitayama is well above the average when it comes to players in this field. So somebody I project for closer to 71.3 strokes rather than the 72.5 number he's at. So I wouldn't be surprised if that one was bumped. Even Cam Davis, right? Like, they have him priced up with some of these elite tier, actually I should say below the elite tier guys, like a Finau, JT, and he's up there in birdie or better percentage, right? Like, sure, JT's up there in, what is he? Number 2 when it comes to birdie or better percentage. Okay, that makes sense. But look at this. Tony Finau's number 15, right? He's number 27. He's really not that much further down the board, and has a similar kind of skill set. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him bumped up there, but love those first 2 picks. And the one fade that's still on the board I like is really this whole fairways board. And I'll remind you guys, these aren't all the props I'm taking, right? I'm just kind of giving you a taste of, one from each category. If you're looking for all the props I'm taking, they are on my Patreon page. I post a write-up for all of them, reasoning and whatnot. I'm posted way before they're posted here on YouTube, so you can actually catch them before they end up getting bumped. So that's the idea there. But this Dean Burmeister under, love them. There's actually a few other guys on the board I still like for under on fairways as well. But it's all coming down to those narrow fairways. We know the average last year was 8.2, but that was with their typical setup. From what I'm hearing on property, some of the quotes I've heard from players out there, you got absolutely tight fairways. They look like US Open fairways. So what I've heard is they played the US Open here a couple years ago. Jon Rahm ended up winning at Torrey Pines, and they had right around those 24, 25-yard fairways. I've heard that on most of the par 4s out there, you have those narrow landing areas. You've got that juicy rough. They want to make it an off-the-tee fest, really differentiate the field when it comes to the ball striking. And if they do so, the fairway average is very well going to be below 50%. You've seen that at this course before. You've seen it when they've had the US Open here before. And these, bottom-end players, like a Cam Davis, well below average. You could even take him an under for fairways. I'm still okay with that, and over on birdies. He doesn't need to be in the fairway to go out there and make a bunch of birdies. But like Burmeister, for example, he's horrible at hitting fairways. He's well below average when it comes to his fairway percentage. And the average might be like 6.7, 6.8 fairways. So I think there's a huge edge on the entire board for unders on fairways. And I'm playing it conservatively. I only have 2 or 3 of them actually in cards at this point. But it'll be interesting to see how that ends up playing out. Because if I'm right, obviously this would be a gold mine. But I don't want to overreact before actually seeing the course in play, right? It's one thing to hear some of that from people on property. It's another thing for, in practice, the fairways to actually be harder to hit. So I wouldn't go crazy on it. I do like the Dean Burmeister under. And by adding the fade here, if we were to take all three overs or all three supportive stances, right, we'd only get a 4x payout. Adding in the fade does take away that multiplier. So that's the idea there. A 3-leg power, not a horrible idea, but you guys know I absolutely love my 2-man powers. You can see you get 3x because it's only a 2-leg card there. Whatever floats your boat, guys, right? It's your cards, it's your money. Play the slips, play the props that you actually feel confident with, and you'll have a much better time when playing DFS. But that's all I've got here for round one, guys. Hopefully you feel a little bit more prepared for getting some of those slips in. Make sure to go ahead, comment down below what you've got as your favorite prop on the board. If you have any questions about a prop, a slip construction question, anything like that, feel free to go ahead and message me on Discord, on the Prize Picks Discord, or just comment on the video here. Like the video before hopping on out of here, and make sure you subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss any of these previews in the future, and subscribe to the Patreon if you want access to all of the props that I'm playing, my write-ups, so on and so forth. Not just for round one, but also for rounds 2 through 4 for every single event. Looking forward to it, guys. Best of luck with all of your slips here for Wednesday's round one, not Thursday. I'm sure it's going to trick me up a few times here over my live stream later on. And if you do have any questions, I'll mention that I am doing a live stream tonight. So it may be after you watch this video or before it. Depends on, when you're getting around to watching this. But I'm going live Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern time. If you have any questions, feel free to go ahead, bring them to that live stream. I'll get them answered for you there as well. Like I said, best of luck. Let's go ahead and get some cash here on Wednesday.